So you decided to come into the industry knowing there was, a dearth of women, knowing there was a dearth of black women, and but you made it happen. So I guess we'll do this out of order a little bit. We'll talk about melanated wine, and then I'm going to back up and probe the early
Okay.
stages. But
Yeah.
what kind of barriers did you
Okay.
face, in trying to build a winery as a woman, as a black woman in an arena where, it was probably, I'm guessing, male dominated and probably white male dominated?
Absolutely. Yeah, so many barriers. Let's just start with the most, common one that most businesses deal with on a regular is the capital or the lack thereof, right? Um, Banks really not wanting to just deal with you or give you anything because we are such a small business that had not been into not just this industry but business long. So there's no way of getting capital for this industry, and most people know, or at least the people that are in this industry know, if you're in this wine or just alcohol industry, it is very top heavy. There is, you're not profiting until maybe after 10 years, of just being in this industry. So that's one of the challenges that, we'll always face and have, and then, you know, it's, um, it's such a stigma tied to wine, which is really something that we're trying to debunk or as we say uncork or remove. Some of the challenges were definitely the capital, the lack of resources, the lack of just people really wanting to give you um not that I was looking for a handout or a hand up, but I think it's more so the resources that I was looking for, the information. I can do the work by myself, but some of the resources, and it's been a bit of a challenge, and nothing out of the ordinary. I guess these are the common struggles that being a black woman in a white male dominated industry that you come against. So it's been pretty typical, but still tough.
Now, have you been able to find people to collaborate with and kind of, work together with and get information and, get the resources you need?
Yes, yes, I have been. So I will say that I have reached out to a lot of other like vineyard owners or winery owners, and when you get to them at that level, um, it has been more helpful than getting people that aren't at that ownership level. And I don't know if it's because of there is an understanding of how hard and how this industry is. So I will say that it has been very helpful to at least I haven't collaborated, so I can say that I've collaborated, but at least being able to get some sort of information. There's been a lot of helpfulness once you can get to the people at the top, but it takes a lot to get to those people at the top. So that's been a huge challenge, but once you are able to communicate with those people there, they've been the most helpful. Have we collaborated with anyone? No one outside of who we've hired to crush and bottle for us right now. So we haven't done any other collaborations with any other wineries or vineyards or anyone else outside of that. But yeah,
Obviously, the names, right? We've
yeah,
got
let's
privilege
get
in
to the
there. We've
name.
got melanated wine. I mean, so we've got these words that are in the narrative right now in terms of racial discussions, and obviously that was on purpose. So,
Mhm.
what were your thoughts when you decided to choose a name that was so kind of race based for the entire business, but also started to incorporate some of the wines? Like, we obviously you were thinking about race at the time. So, what were your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, so many thoughts, so many thoughts. So with that one specifically, I we much like our name wanted to make a very bold statement, right? And with the wine privilege, first of all, it is an amazing wine. But with that one specifically, we really wanted to have like a wine that was sort of out there and it could be a conversation starter. And you will be amazed the people that come in and talk about privilege. And it does exactly what we intended it to do. People come in and they're like, "Oh my God, is this white privilege? Like, what is this?" And it's like, well, and at first I was a bit caught off guard because I was like, oh my God, did you just say that? But now it's like it's a thing. And it's like, oh no, 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 no. That's not what it is. But let's talk about it. And that in essence is what melanated wine is all about. Like it is a woman-owned, black-owned company, but it is an urban winery all in itself, and it is for everybody. And we love for people to come in and feel comfortable to have those conversations, to ask those questions about, hey, is this white privilege? No, but let's talk about that, right? So it's that yes, that name was very intentional, and it has served its purpose, and it has done exactly what we wanted it to do.
That is amazing because, as you know, and as we talked about in the intro, that's exactly what we try to do here with the Contraband Wagon. Just allow people to have that space to have the conversations, right? Like that kind of hesitation that you talked about where people will say it, or even like kind of your reaction to it, like we need that tension, we need that opportunity to communicate about these issues, because one thing that I've found, and one thing I always say on this show, is that the conversations I end up having with Black people about race are totally different, oftentimes, than the conversations I end up having with
Mm-hmm.
white people about race. And
Yeah.
a lot of that comes from the fact that, there's this shared racial experience that a lot of people who are racialized as Black have being in America, right? And so there's a lot of the questions that white people have, a lot of the kind of curiosity that their mind goes to, is stuff that's like settled questions for a lot of us because we're like out here living it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think merging those two, right, getting that curiosity that a lot of people have into a place where they feel safe and comfortable saying, hey, like, I know this is a black woman owned
Yeah.
winery. This bottle is called Privilege. The place is called Melanated Wine. Can we talk about this? And like you
Yeah.
said, conversation
Yeah.
starter. And that's all we need, right? Is a spark. Is a
Yep.
moment in
Yep.
time that allows people to make a choice that, hey, I'm going to engage in this conversation right now. And I feel empowered to do so. I
Mm-hmm.
even feel
Mm-hmm.
somewhat encouraged to do so. So I applaud you
Yeah.
and great
Yeah.
work with that. Now, you told me a very funny story about people responding to the melanated part. So, would you mind recounting that here?
Oh my God. Okay. So, we have, a lot of woke people, but then we have a lot of people that aren't. So I didn't realize that the term melanated wasn't something that everyone would get or and understand. So I would get, white people that would come into the winery, or if we're out, and they would be curious about the name and like, oh, is melanated like a process of something, or like what is it? And then I'm like, oh no. And then I'm able to educate. But then I get the other side where people won't even ask and they're just like, oh, so you're the owner? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, so you're Melanie? And I'm like, Melanie. No, my name is Lashonda. And they're like, oh, okay. And it took me quite a few, and this has happened quite a few times, and it took me some time before I realized, oh, you think melanated is like, I got it. So you think melanated is the no, 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 no. But then again, you get the opportunity to educate. Every time something like this happens, it's like, this is my opportunity. It's a window. I can't miss this window, right? So, in my response to it at first, it was utter confusion. Like, why would you think my name is Melanie? But now it's like, oh, I get it. But let me tell you about it. So yeah, Melanie. No, my name is not Melanie. It is Lashonda, and the term melanated is has nothing to do with that. It is that pigment, in a play on that term. So it's all about uncorking the culture for us. And I feel like every time a conversation like that happens, we're uncorking the culture.
Absolutely. And how do people respond? Like when you educate people, like
Yeah,
are they accepting? Are they open?
I feel bad sometimes because once you explain, they're like, oh, you could see it in their eyes where they're like, oh, I should have known that, or oh, I'm so sorry. And it's like, no, 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 it's my pleasure to be able to educate and to help, but it's been different responses. I've had all of them. I've had the pure like, or the oh, tell me more and all of that. But yeah, it's been interesting. I've had all reactions, and I welcome them all.
Hmm. So that's unique in my experience in talking to black people in terms of like I welcome them all because that's also my perspective. Obviously, I'm here on a podcast. I talk to people all the time about race, but and of course you're in a different situation, right? You have a business, and your business is
Mhm.
kind of like centered around creating this culture, right? And creating this and creating
Yeah.
amazing wines, and creating a comfortable environment. So. Um, Obviously that's something you decided on the from the outset, that you wanted to create. But a lot of black people I speak to, they feel like it's a huge burden doing this kind of education work. But you have decided
Yeah.
to build it into your business. Can you talk about what made you just make that decision, and why do you think a lot of black people feel like I don't feel like I should have to take on this burden? I don't want to.
I think for me, it definitely, so my children go to attend private school, right? And I find out through them the lack of culture and the lack of understanding that a lot of their classmates have. And it could be something as simple as what, well, the most, what we do with our hair, or, just anything about us. And it truly is, they just don't know. It's just, and for lack of better terms, and it's not a bad thing, but it's just pure ignorance, and it's just because there has been a lack of exposure to our culture. So instead of being so uncomfortable with something that you don't know because you don't know it, let me help you make a decision, because right now your decision isn't based off of anything but just being uncomfortable and choosing not to know. But once you know, then you can make the choice, to either deal or not. But for me, that helped me see that, oh, okay, if they don't know, their parents don't know. If their parents don't know, they're not teaching it. Okay, so let's talk about this. So for me, it's not a burden. I enjoy those conversations because I too want to know what you think and how you're, like what's really going on, the thought process. Like, what are we, why are you standoffish? Why aren't we saying hello to each other? Why aren't we treating, so I want to know just as much as they want to know, or whatever. So for me, it's not a burden at all. I don't feel like I'm explaining or having to explain anything that I don't want to explain, or being a part of a conversation I don't want to be a part of. I enjoy that. And I feel like if we don't control the narrative and who we are as a people, then now we're letting them do it. And that hasn't been okay for years. So at some point, we have to take control of that. I think some people just get frustrated because, um, they can just be kind of stuck in this mindset of also fear, right? Fear of not being accepted, as we have not been for all this time. Fear of, still the rejections. Fear of once you do find out or know me or know about us, that you still won't, and it's like, you know, where once we accept ourselves, love ourselves, and know wholeheartedly that I am whole, it doesn't matter what you think about me, your opinion is not my reality, then I think we'll be more open to sharing who we are. But it's 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 undoing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, of stuff that has been taught and passed down from generation to generation. So it's definitely different. for every one of us, and I understand and empathize with everyone that you know do want to share and those that don't. I don't judge either way, but I'm
Wise
like,
words,
hey, for those
very
of us that
wise
want to share, let's
words.
share.
Very
What was
wise
that?
words. I mean, listening to you just then, you said several things that reminded me. I was like hearing my own voice back at me. Like many of the things you just said, I have said here on this stream. So it's really good to hear that. It's very affirming. Number one, because I do encounter a lot of people who are like, oh, like why should we have to be the ones or this and that or like so but I'm really
Because we
much
are the one.
right, exactly, precisely, and that's what I say. I'm like, it's maybe it's not the most fair situation, right? But like, has it ever been fair for us? Like, are we in a fair situation? Like, at a certain point you've got to have some acceptance of forces that are greater than yourself, a past that of a legacy of a past that is informing your present, and it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay. And acceptance of that and moving forward with that knowledge of reality and the reality that you exist in. I think even if it's something that maybe you wouldn't have chosen for yourself, and I think that's one of the big barriers for people is like, I don't want it. I don't want to do this because I feel like it's not something I chose. I feel like it's out of my control,
Yeah.
right? But like, ultimately, like you said, having a strong sense of self, right? Understanding who
Yes.
you are in relation to this world, and to the other humans around us. Once you're comfortable with that, once you understand that, it's much easier to communicate with people about these issues.
You know what?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know what does resonate with me is when you mentioned that someone said to you that, or when that gentleman said to you that why don't you, did he say act black?
That's right. Yeah.
Or, yeah, that, that right there is something that I really want us, um, hmm, to be careful with, even when we're saying it to each other, right? That you don't act black enough, you don't talk black, what is talking black? Let's not do that, right? Because I'm articulating or enunciate, like let's not, I think it's a I don't, I want to tread lightly when I say a time and place for everything. But when you're in the professional field and you're in the, whatever, we can listen, everybody can enunciate and pronounce, and do all of that. And then when you're home and you're relaxed, you can do and whatever that you please. And I'm not saying that we have to do that. I'm just saying that we it's it's something that it's not just I want us to get out of saying that just because we are uh enunciating that's white, that's sounding white. Because no, 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 no. That language doesn't belong to any one people, right? Like you get what I'm saying? Like that in itself. And I think because I also have heard that so many times is, oh, you sound like a white girl, or oh, you sound, and I'm like, listen, or my kids have been told that before. And that's stuff that I don't like. And I don't want them to grow up with feeling like they have to be a certain type of way, other than them true selves. And however that comes out in that moment is your true and authentic self. Whatever you feel, however you feel like speaking in that moment, it's how you're speaking. So that's something that I really want us to kind of like, as a people, as Black people, just let's do better with that.
Yeah, and I think what it shows is that a lot of black people have kind of made this image of blackness, this negative image of blackness that has been kind of imposed upon us. They've kind of taken it on, right? They've accepted it, and that's something that needs to be unraveled as well. We focus a lot on white privilege, we focus a lot on the work that white people have to do, but the fact of the matter is that like a tyrannical racial hierarchy has been imposed on all of us. You know, just the effects of that
Yes.
imposition are they vary. You know, depending upon our experience, depending upon our geography, like you were saying earlier, depending upon
Right.
a lot of different factors, right? And so I think it's just another opportunity to create space for conversation, right? If somebody tells me that you don't act black, right? Then I'll be like, well, what do you mean by that? You know, like, what does that
Hmm.
mean to you? What does being black
Hmm.
mean to you? Because as far as I know, I've been black my whole life, you know, like since I came
Right.
out, you
Right.
know, so, you know, you're going to have to connect some dots for me there. And it really gets people thinking critically about, well, what do I mean when I say that, right? Do you
Yeah,
have,
that's
yeah,
true.
yeah. Like, so it's the same kind of reflection that we're talking that we want to get white people to do. We need to do it ourselves as well. And there's also going to come a time where, as a people, we're going to have to let go of some of what we call the culture, some of the things that have come out of our trauma, our shared trauma, right? Like, as
Yeah.
that trauma hopefully recedes, you know, like, which I think over time it definitely has. You know, I think it would be crazy to say, you know, trust me, I understand the power of racism. I understand how pervasive it is and whatnot. But
Hmm.
compared to what our ancestors were dealing with, we're just in a completely different realm. And I think some of the things that you were talking about in terms of black people being in positions of power, in terms of greater ability for us to access people at the top, right? Things that
Yeah.
were much more difficult in the past. We're starting to get there slowly at a crawl, but we are
Yeah.
getting there. And so the closer and closer we get to that um, equality as humans, as part of the human family, and looked upon that way by
Right.
people, then we're gonna have to start, you know, not internalizing so much the trauma that we are continuously having to endure for people around us who want us to be as small as we possibly can make ourselves, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's part
Once
of
we
it.
start, yeah, once we start feeling whole and you know, believing and in ourselves and knowing truly and authentically who we are as a people, regardless of you know, everything else and the opinions of others, just like I mentioned earlier. Of course, not forgetting, you know, who and what our people, you know, ancestors and everyone has gone through before us for us to be able to even have the privilege that we have, you know, but taking that and not letting all of that fight go, um, you know, just be done in vain, right? Taking it and excelling and advancing and all of that. And it's like so many people fought before us to have the privileges, to have everything that we need to do something with it and not allow an outside force, an outside anybody dictate how we feel on the inside or what we do, you know, how we feel about ourselves and all of that. And it's an everyday battle. So, you know, I'm preaching to the choir. It's not like, you know, it's an everyday battle. But I think once we are aware of it, we're able to start to make changes and start to unravel some of those things that have been tied and knitted into us from, you know, all these years. So pronounce all of that. There is nothing wrong with us excelling and continuing to do better for the people that pave that way for us. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. We have a lot to unravel. We have a lot to unravel within ourselves, our culture, the hit like everything. And I don't know. I think you know, as we come together as a people and try, we have to be intentional, right? Because it's so much that we've been taught that's just in our subconscious that we don't even realize that we're doing, we're thinking, we're, you know, or decisions that we're making, we don't even realize it. And it's not until, like you have mentioned, you know, maybe being asked a question or called out or, you know, whatever, that it's like, oh, did I say that? Did I do that? And I think the more that we have those conversations with each other in our community to call each other out or be able to have those open conversations and, you know, because I think justice we're just as bad as a people on not having certain conversations as as the other people that are, you know, we're not having those conversations as much either because it's so touchy and you know it's sad. It's like, hey, we need to all kind of get on a even playing field, and so that we can share, this good information, because it's so much in our history, our culture, that we can pass on and that we can share, that is good, hearty stuff. Um, and we're lacking all of that, and we're just not doing we're I think we're doing a disservice. We're doing a disservice. And it's not just to teach our counterparts or, teach other people. It's to teach our culture, right? Learning our culture, to teach our culture, so they don't have to go to school and depend on getting a little bit of information, and the wrong information at that. Like, it's our duty. But okay,
No,
I'm not
no,
gonna rant.
no. Listen, preach, because you're right. It is our duty. I mean, I also believe that, but a lot of people, again, a lot of people, they are rejecting that. They are rejecting the idea that we do have a duty, and so it's something that we're going to have to contend with for the foreseeable future. And
Yeah.
it's especially given that there's been this huge anti-CRT push that has resulted in all of this legislation in all of these different states prohibiting a lot of the education that you're talking about right there that we need, right? You said we shouldn't rely on schools, and I agree with that. I agree that we should, as a people, take on that responsibility ourselves. However, we can't deny that kids spend a heck of a lot of time in
They
schools,
do.
and
Yeah.
especially public schools where the vast majority of Black children attend. So we can see that the legislatures across the different states have made a clear decision that diversity, equity, inclusion, that what they're calling critical race theory, which they just put anything related to race underneath that category.
Yeah.
And even in Florida, where it's most extreme, teaching AP Black history, African American history, teaching about even Ruby Bridges and her experience as a child. Oh yeah, they sure did. They sure did try to ban her book, even though she's still alive out here. Uh,
No way.
oh
That
yeah,
is a thing.
oh
That
yeah, it's a thing. They are truly no longer hiding their intentions. There's too many blatant, transparent examples of just trying to shut
Yes.
down all education about this subject at this point. That it's becoming very
Yeah.
clear that that's where we're headed, or that's where we are anyway. And so that's another reason why, for me, um, I find being intentional, like with this stream and doing outreach and trying to get more people involved in the conversation, especially young people, because they're targeting young people. They are
Yeah,
targeting
of
them
course.
to make sure that they remain ignorant, to make sure they remain making decisions in ignorance. And, a lot of the people in my generation and the older generation I talk to, they talk about this feeling of betrayal that they have, from their own country, of not getting
Hmm.
the education, of not,
Hmm.
being allowed to say, oh, this is who we are as a country, and like this is my history, instead of being sold a false history, an illusory history. And, I just had a master's student in counseling who's going to school in Virginia, a racialized white woman, come on the stream and tell me that, you know, she was shocked to learn about this country's racial history at over 40 years old for the first time.
Oh my.
And there are many people out here like that, unfortunately.
That's
Like
so disheartening.
it's very difficult to hear people say stuff like that and to know that, people are out here like that. And another thing she said, and it goes back to what you said earlier about how it's subconscious, right? In the Black community, we've got a lot of subconscious things going on internally. Well, it's the same thing that she described as well. She was talking to her Black friend about racism, and she made a statement about, oh, racist people do X, Y, and Z, right? She like said some stuff. An hour later, she made a statement out of her own mouth that when she heard it, she was like, oh my God, I just said the
Oh,
thing that I said racist people do. And she could not deny, right, in that moment. But like, what did she do? She accepted that she said it and that
yeah,
meant that she had to change. So
yeah,
again, creating those moments
that
where that
part.
can occur. Because
Yep.
right now, America has done a very good job of eliminating the possibility for those moments to even happen.
Zero tolerance.
Right? Yeah, exactly. By segregating us, right? By
Yeah.
making sure we can't talk about it in school,
Yeah.
making sure that people who do talk about it are vilified.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I mean, we're in a battle, you know. Like I saw the writing on the wall, you know, 5, 6 years ago in terms of like a new intensification of stuff,
Mm.
and that's why I jumped on this because I think really people being able to connect like with you for instance, that's not something that I could have done easily without the use of technology, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Having this live stream where anyone around the world can watch me and you talk about this issue, right? Maybe they've
Yeah.
never even heard two black people talk about race, right?
That part. Yeah.
You know, and so we have to make use of the advances in our connectivity as human beings, right? Because that's what this is all about, is making people
Yeah.
understand that we are all part of one human family, that there aren't
Yeah.
different categories of humans, that there is no hierarchy of human beings,
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know, and that just because we've had different experiences dealing with race and racism, it doesn't mean that we're any different as people, as humans. It just means that we need
Yeah.
to learn from each other. And that's the same
That's
with
it.
anything, right? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So,
one race, the human race.
truth.
Like let's just, let's just go there. And to be treated anything less than that is just not acceptable. Is the risk of taking that on worth the reward? And I think it is. You know what I'm saying? I
Keep it
think
simple. I like that. Keep it simple,
that's
right?
it.
Yeah.
That the risk of taking that on is definitely worth the reward. So we have to stand for something or we'll fall for anything. Like,
Whew. That's right.
you
That's
know,
exactly right. You have to stand for something. You got to, you know, I always mention Draymond Green. I'm a huge NBA fan, and so like one thing Draymond Green always says is like you got to stand on that. You know, if you believe something, you got to stand on that.
you have to stand on it, no wavering, like unwavering. Listen, I'm standing on it and I'm standing strong. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember
And
even when I was creating the stream, you know, I was thinking about all that. The all my family members, all my friends, when I told them I was going to do this, they were they all had the same reaction, which is expressing concern for my physical safety. Every single one.
yeah,
Every single person, the same thing. It was quite disheartening for me actually because I was like, yeah, I mean, did I think about my physical safety being in jeopardy if I got big enough, you know, if I start getting out there and trying to do the thing that I know that people don't want to be done, that I know the United
yeah,
States doesn't want to be done, then
yeah,
yeah, it's a dangerous undertaking.
yeah,
I
of
get it.
course.
Um,
But that risk was worth the reward for you.
100%. one hundred
Yeah,
percent. I mean, to me,
yeah,
there's no question. There was no question, you know, am I willing to give my life, you know, for this endeavor, for this? And the answer is yes, I am.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
as a teacher, somebody who is consistently working with younger people and people who are trying to achieve their goals and whatnot, right? And unlocking people's potential. I've just seen how much potential is lost because of this issue, how much potential
Hmm.
is just discarded, ignored, wasted. And that
Hmm.
is, to me, human potential. That's the root of like everything that we do. That's the
Like
root of who
everything
we
that we
are.
are. Yeah,
Yeah. So like, I
yeah.
mean, to me, there's really very little that's as important as this artificially created barrier to
Mm.
unlocking human potential that we have,
Ooh,
yeah, that we've been empowering for generations. We can remove it. We can
that was
remove it.
that was a word right there. This artificial intelligence. Oh, that was a word. That was a
Yeah.
word, definitely. I feel the same when it comes to the risk of like I knew what I would be getting myself into, naming the company Melanated Wine, having a wine that's called Privilege and all of that. Um, our very first when we had our grand opening, our very first news interview, I think can't remember if it was if it was ABC 11, but underneath one of the comments, and I vowed from that day on I would never read another comment, regardless if it was good or bad. But underneath, and I'm sure you can still go and find that comment today. They said, "Why would you name your? She's doomed. She's doomed for naming a company um, a melanated wine, a black owned, who cares? She's doomed and she'll never survive. And it's just like, huh, okay. And with that being the first comment that I had ever read, it was our first interview. It did kind of get me down. I was like, oh my God, how dare you? And, I was really upset. But then I had to get out of that. And I was like, you know what? I believe in the risk of what I'm doing is so much worth the reward of the people that I would teach and the people that I would inspire and the people that will go forward and do great and be great and the dreams that I would uncork by coming out and doing what I am doing, this risk is worth the reward. So I vowed from that day forward to never read another comment, because what I won't allow to happen is for comments to dictate my high nor my lows. So I don't care if it's a good or a bad comment. It doesn't dictate. It's not my reality on who I am and my mission and what I am trying to do. So the risk for me is definitely worth the reward at the end of the day. And I hear the same thing from you with starting this podcast.
100%. In Florida, again, the state that we're like mimicking for whatever reason, like
Yeah.
they are literally transparently trying to create a separation from the different generations of teachers so that they can bring those
Oh.
teachers in and teach them how to never stray from the curriculum that
Oh, so
they.
it's intentional.
Oh yes, this is intentional. This is, and like I hate like sounding like a conspiracy theorist. I know I do right now, but like you can look at you can look at the policies, you can read the laws. Like they are not
Yes.
hiding. They are not doing this like behind closed doors. Like this is something they're doing purposefully, intentionally. They're creating a whole new school system that they're funding through collecting fees from the current system so that they can phase it out. So they can
Oh
create one
my
that they
God.
control. So this is going on in front of people's faces. Like there
Mm,
isn't a lot. There's really almost no pushback. Like
wow.
yeah, and that's the issue is because like this is not an issue. Like education as a value, I feel like in America is it's low on the priority list for a lot of people,
Oh wow.
and this is the result of that is that we don't have a lot of pushback for this legislative agenda that's like spreading across the country at a rapid pace too. I mean, they're passing these laws as fast as they possibly can to take control. And yeah, I'm so fearful of it because it can end up stopping the forward progress that some of us have started to make educating people about race
Yeah.
and racism and other things, and just like humanity. So man, it's scary times, but also there's a great opportunity for people like you and me who are dedicated for to collaborate with other people who feel the same way, other people who are doing the same work, and fight back because this is a battle. It really is a
Yeah.
true battle, and
Yeah.
we got to start seeing it that way. We got to start acting like it. We got to get organized.
Absolutely, absolutely. At the end of the day, again, I think we both agree the risk is worth the reward, and let's do it. Like
Yeah.
I'm game.
Cheers. Cheers.
Feel like I know the answer to this based off of our conversation today, but what is it that truly fuels you to keep going and giving in this specific um uh thing that you're doing with the podcast and informing people and all of that? Like what is that one thing that does continue to fuel you? Because I'm sure at times you get depleted. I'm sure at times it's hard and it's all of the above things. But what is that one thing that really truly keeps you sort of going? And what would you tell the other person that we're talking about? We know it's people out there like us, right? But it may be someone like us that may be depleted. Maybe they've tried every avenue and they are just kind of like wiped and like, oh, I've knocked my head against every door and nothing has happened. What would you say? Like, what has fueled you and what would you say to them?
I'll start with the latter first. What would I say to them? I'd say
Yeah.
you haven't knocked on every door.
Mm-hmm.
There are billions of doors, all right? And ultimately, you just got to find the right people, right? That's kind of how life is in general, not just in this context, but like, I mean, stuff that I've been thinking about for the last 12 years is just starting to come to fruition at this moment. So,
Mm,
like, I mean, it's just the way things are. Unfortunately, things don't happen in the time that you want them to happen, you know?
no.
They happen in their own time. And so, what's most important is that you remain steadfast in your beliefs. Like we said
Yeah,
before, if you truly believe about it, then all you have to do is stay the course and everything will come eventually. And if I were
absolutely.
talking to them, I'd say, look, you met me, right? You know, you met a
Yeah,
kindred spirit. You met someone
yeah.
trying to do the exact same thing, someone who's found some modicum of success in terms of like getting people on this podcast, people of higher levels, you know, more and more. I worked my way up, you know, like I started with
Mm-hmm.
random people on Twitter. And
Mm-hmm.
then I started targeting people who were on Twitter, right? I had access to this technology, I had access to people who I would never have access to in the
Yeah,
past, right? I'd be writing them
yeah.
a handwritten letter and sending an open for something, right? I can direct message like, you know, a famous person. So I
Right.
found some success in doing that. And what we have to do is realize that we're in a new age. We're in a new technological age where things that were never possible in the past are now possible. We can now collaborate in ways that we never collaborated before. We can create experiences that we can never create before. And start getting creative, start thinking outside the box because that kind of thinking is what's going to lead to success. And yeah, it is hard. It's so difficult,
Ooh,
but we have each other and we're working on this together. So you're not in this
ooh,
alone. You know, that's what I would
ooh.
tell that person.
I love that. I love that. And that's the perfect like segue into saying this one thing. I'm drinking, and you probably can't see. I'm
Oh no, we see
drinking
it.
one of my wines that's called Manifest, and it's our Riesling. And I don't know if you remember the quote that I said when I introduced our wine, but it goes into what you just said. So your manifestation can be an inspiration to an entire generation,
Ooh,
right?
that's
You
exactly
never
it.
know who you're inspiring. Keep going. Just like you mentioned, it may not be in our lifetime that we see a change. We'll be a part of it. We'll be like people, just like we're standing on someone's shoulders, they'll be able to stand on ours. Like your manifestation can be an inspiration to an entire generation. And that risk in itself is worth the reward.
Woo. You said it all. You said it all. That is amazing.